Then I'm going to invite my friend Pastor Isaiah Robertson, dynamic guy, my youth pastor towards the end of my high school career. One of my great friends. We kind of miss each other at our wedding, so it's crazy. I happened to be going out of town when his wedding happened. He had some stuff come up on town, so we miss each other, kind of get married. But you know what? That don't change our friendship. That don't change the love that I have for him. And I'm just so happy to see that he's doing great things for the black church. Like, his focus has been black church and growing it and making sure that holistically the big broad spectrum of black church is growing on an educational level, on a spiritual level, and on a very reformed level. So I can't wait to hear what he says, being that he's writing a book or written a book about the black church and the different things that we encounter. So let me pray, and I'm going to go on and accept his friend request. Hey, y'all about to get an hour almost of just dynamicness, even that's not a word as is now, or of just crazy good stuff. And I have some questions prepared for him, and he can probably give me way more. He's going to give you information. Get your pen and paper out. It's about to go crazy. So let me pray. Dear Heavenly Father, as I get ready to just talk about a topic, God, that's weighing so heavily on so many different kids. We got social injustice happening to everybody. We have social injustice happening across the board. And what do young black Christians do? God, we're taught to serve you first, to make you Lord of our life, to make you master, but then we're being persecuted by people who call themselves believers, are supposed to be our brothers and sisters in Christ, killing us. So God, what do you do about civil rivalry? What do you do about sibling injustice? If you look at us as all a part of your adoption, God, when do you discipline them? Some of us may say, when do the sister or the brother get some discipline for their actions? So God, we see it's a discord, it's a button of the head between our blackness and what we see going on in our community, and then what our Christian mandate is. So God, help us today unpack that. Help us understand how young black Christians deal with the fact that they're Christians, but they also have this black events, these black thoughts, these black culture that's happening, and then not all of it is positive and good, and it's happening at the hands of other people who would call themselves Christian as well. So God, help us with this discord, help us with this lack of unity within our Christian body, but help us as young black people deal with it as well. Because I know a lot of people are angry, God, upset, and ready to tear some stuff up. So God, what are we supposed to do? It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So real quickly, let me bring in my bro. Let me bring in my good friend. I'm finding him right now. Oh, wait, here we go. I forgot Sean taught me this wrong button. Sorry, y'all can see a little bit of my house. I don't know how to. There we go. And here we go. And here we go. TV's everywhere. So I just requested that we wait for him to join. Somebody's like, oh man, it's a whole nother decoration. Yes.
Yo.
The man, the
Yo,
myth, the legend,
bro.
man. Wow.
Man.
This is crazy. So you're about to get the most time, because we normally have a worship session and we start about 7:45. But I said, hey, I know for a fact that we're about to have a lot of questions. We're about to have a lot of stuff going on. And before we get into it, I'm going to step away real quick because I'm going to make sure I close all my doors so I don't want my dog the bark and stuff. But while I do that, tell the people a little bit about what you got going on, just like a minute of what you got going on. So give me 1 second. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I do have to let everybody know I do have a hard stop at 9 because I have another conference call that I'm hosting. So I will have to hop off, but I'm going to give you as much time as I can. But man, Trey, you know me, a lot of people know me. I think I see your mom on there. My son on here. A lot of the old youth that I used to know are on here. My name's Isaiah Robertson, husband of one wife, father to 5 children, pastor. I pastor the Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church in Cartersville, Georgia. And as you mentioned, I have a deep passion to see the African-American church grow and flourish and be well. So, my area of focus for really the past, I want to say 2 years, has been Black church studies, textual ecclesiology. And so I got a book coming out. It's set to be released on August the 25th. It's called Black Empowered. Really excited about that. It's my very, very, very first book. Man, I'm excited to be talking to my boy.
Right. Isn't it crazy? So when I did the sermon on Sunday, I wasn't thinking, okay, the next following week, we're going to have all this stuff to talk about. in my mind, I was like, okay, you know, God, you've been poking me to talk about this. I don't want to, because I'm one of those people where, man, I don't want to keep race in the forefront of my young youth mind, because I don't want them to be, you know, intense about it, right? And then I'm like, lo and behold, I preached a sermon, and the next couple of days is like, I was preparing you to prepare their hearts and their mind for what they're going to see this weekend, in which I think, out of all the cases we've seen, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, shoot the list, Fidel Castro, Sandra Bland, and Breonna, we had so much this week. And it was just like, and this one was what I was telling people, I was just talking to people about it. I was like, this one was the first one where you had, normally it's the cop and those people, and it's just like that one person cops. So it's like, it's always this middle, like, ground for people to escape. This was the first one where other people was around and saying, that's wrong. You're killing him. We see them killing them. We see it. Hey, stop doing that. You heard people in the background. I'm a nurse. Hey, man, you even saw the dude at one point try to get up and say, hey, man, you don't have to do all that. And this is the first time where the community was there, present, chimed in, and now he just didn't do it. Like, he didn't do it. And then we'll find out more that this cop has repeated instances where he's killing people and shooting people and harming people. And I don't know if you ever had a job where if you make 4 or 5 big mistakes, they keep you. Like, and so now it's really a thing. So my first question right off the bat, which is, how do young Black Christians deal with this? Well, as a matter of fact, how do older Black Christians deal with this? Because we have this dynamic where we're Black, but we're also Christ. And, you know, if you're a Christian, the theme is to put Christ before your Blackness. However, I know in the Black community, it tends to be more, you know, so how do we get them where it's like, I'm Black and I'm Christian, but, you know, how do you balance this?
Yo, man, honestly, bro, I'm shook. And, you know, man, and I'm going to just be straight up and be transparent. I don't know no other way to be, man. You know,
that's what we like on here.
Yeah, there are times where I waffle between feeling like I got to pick up the gun, and then, you know, feeling like, okay, no, let me pick up my Bible, right?
Right.
Because Black bodies are still expendable in this country. And what we're seeing recorded is nothing new.
Right.
And the only reason why we're seeing it at this pace is because of camera phones. But I cringe when I think about how much of this is happening that's not being recorded. How many people of color are being brutalized and murdered and we'll never know.
Right.
And so, honestly, man, what are we to do as Black people, as Black Christians? Bro, we need therapy, right? And I'm not just talking about running to Big Mama's house and letting Big Mama sit us on the couch and rub our head. I'm talking about we need to ensure that we're seeing somebody that can identify with us, that is culturally sensitive, that we can talk to, right? I'm a pastor, so you know, I know that mental health is sort of taboo, in our community. But man, we need to kick all that, you know, don't tell nobody what we going through to the side, and we need to search out mental health in times like these. And yo, we just need to stay close. We need to stay close to our family, to our faith community. We need to be telling the younger generation how to navigate. Yo, it's so sad, and I don't want to ramble, but it's so sad, man. I was in the car, man, and my kids were in the back seat. My older kids were in the back seat, Mike, Emily, and Isaiah. And as we were driving to the house, we saw this Black, looked like he was about in his early 20s, Black man. He was pulled over, and literally 4 squad cars, behind him for one dude, So I see this, and I start to pull over, because I'm like, nah, I'm gonna pull out my cell phone cam. I'm gonna make sure that this brother ain't, you know, he doesn't get murdered, right. As I start pulling over, man, my kids in the back, they start screaming, Dad, no, Dad, just drive, They're literally terrified, because they know that I could potentially, just because I'm helping,
Right.
Just because I'm an innocent bystander, I could potentially end up like Philando Castile.
Yeah.
I could potentially end up like Tamir Rice.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so I was shook by the terror of my children.
Wow.
Right. In trying to do the right thing, but they were so worried about my being and my existence that they were unable to kind of let go of their fear.
Wow.
And so, you know, Black people in America right now, man, we gotta, bro, we just gotta figure out a way to keep our eyes, you know, upon Christ and our minds at peace.
So what you say, does Jesus care about social injustice? Because I hear some Caucasian preachers talk about it. We definitely know we hear it. And some Black churches, they're not really hitting the issue like I think they should be hitting the issue. So does Jesus even care about social injustices?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I would go even further to say that if you claim to be a Christian and you don't care about justice, you really don't care about Jesus. Because we have to understand that Jesus, as the Messiah, the one who's going to rectify all things, he is all about justice. As a matter of fact, there's a Messianic prophecy regarding Jesus in Isaiah 42. Let me read it real quick.
Go ahead. Yeah. You got time. Yeah. Do you think?
All right. So this is Isaiah 42. This is a prophecy in the book of Isaiah looking forward to the coming of the Messiah. And it says this: "Behold, my servant whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry aloud or lift up his voice or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a faintly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not grow faint or be discouraged till he has established justice on the earth." Right?
Wow. Okay.
So if you are insensitive to the plight of the marginalized and the oppressed, then you don't know Jesus.
Wow.
Because Jesus didn't just come to save souls. He
Right.
also came to cause our bodies, our lives to flourish as well and bring us justice. So if you have this vision that says, all I'm worried about is a human soul, but I'm not worried about a human body, I don't know the God you know. I don't.
Right.
Because the God of the Bible and his son Jesus is concerned about both our soul and our body. He wants our souls and our bodies to flourish.
Right. That's so. Would you say that we can have a little bit of hope in knowing that, hey, Jesus will correct this?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So that's where my ultimate hope lies, right? When I see what's happening in our country, the injustices happening in our country, right? And when I realize that there is so much more going on that's not being recorded, right? The only hope I have is that in the end, even though every injustice might not be rectified down here on earth, in the end, there is a God in heaven who will hold every evildoer, every oppressor to account, right? My ultimate hope is that God, as the good judge, will see to it that those who victimize the oppressed and the marginalized will ultimately be held to account, even if it's in the age to come. And so that's my only hope, because, bro, if I didn't have that hope, then I would pick up a gun. Honestly, I would, because I would feel like I have to take matters into my own hand.
Right.
So, yeah.
So as a Christian, because we're seeing right now, like in Minnesota, right? And we know the cause of it. We know the looting and the burning the city down is from just at a point of just, this is what happened when you shake a soda can too long, and now you chop the top off. Or this is what happened when you keep poking at a hornet's nest and the hornets are just laying dormant. And now and I try to tell people this, it's not necessarily millennials.
Right.
This is the Generation Z is on our cuffs, and they're like, we don't play that stuff. So as a believer, what should my response be to racism? Should I be looting? Should I be burning stuff down? What should I do as a believer? Should I be out there protesting?
Yeah, so honestly, Trey, I don't even like to call them riots. I like to call them uprisings, right? Okay. Because when you have your neck, literally have your neck on an entire community, right? We're going to want to rise up, and we're going to want to try to buck the oppression that we feel on our necks off of us, right?
Right.
That's what we're seeing in the streets of Minneapolis. However, as believers, we have to engage in a way that doesn't make us like the people that we're fighting against.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
So yes, we protest, and yes, we demonstrate. Yes, we get involved. As a matter of fact, everybody listening right now should have already signed the petition demanding that the officers who murdered George Floyd will be held to account. If you haven't signed that petition, you need to. It's an action pack. You can sign that petition now.
Action pack.
Yes, action pack. Sean King. It's an organization ran by Sean King. So
Okay.
yes, every believer has a responsibility to do what they can, whether it's giving money, whether it's picking up the phone, whether it's going out and protesting and picketing. Also, we're in an election year.
Yeah.
So we have to vote according to our interests, right? We can't stay home. We can't afford to see evil men maintain power, right?
Right.
These are all our responsibilities and our duties as believers, along with prayer, along with, faith, right?
Right.
We can't have one or the other. We have to have both, because I know some people will say, no, we just need to pray. And we yes, pray. But after you get up off your knees, realize that faith without works is dead.
Wow.
And get out, get in the streets, get out, give your money, get out and do what you can. Support organizations that are fighting for justice. And that's let me just say this. This is what we see in the incarnation of Jesus, right?
Right.
So you have God who loves the world, right?
Right.
Though he's transcendent, right? So he exists outside of time.
Right.
Because he loves the world, he decides that he's going to incarnate, take on flesh, and come into the world and tabernacle among us, right? Right. He's going to leave glory, right? To come down and condescend and come to where we are. Right. This is the example that we see, that Jesus didn't just say, oh, well, I'm going to stay up here and be loving. No, I'm going to get down in the trenches. I'm going to get down where they are. Yeah. I'm going to ensure that my ministry is accessible to the poor, the marginal, the disenfranchised. And if we learn anything about Jesus, we learn that he's an activist, right? Wow. Yeah. We learn that he doesn't just sit there. Yeah. He actually steps into action, so much so that he leaves glory to come down to earth to fight for those who can't fight for themselves.
Wow. So okay. It's things we can do. So would you say, this is like a sub question to that answer, to your response. So would you say any believer, black, white, whatever, says, you know what, I don't know what to do, so I'm not gonna do anything. What would you say to that believer?
Honestly, and I'm gonna say it like I feel it, if you have that attitude, then you are complicit in the death of George Floyd. You are somewhat responsible for every injustice that will take place here on out. An injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. Right. If your attitude is you don't care or you're not going to get involved, then you're like the people. If you see those old pictures of Lincoln, right? Yeah. So you have crowds surrounding the men being lynched. Now, many in the crowds didn't actually string the man up, right? Right. They weren't involved in hog tying him and hoisting him up to that tree. However, by being in the crowd, they are complicit in this man's murder. Right. If there wasn't this appetite for this amongst those in the crowd, then it wouldn't happen, even though they didn't actually participate in the act. Right. And I want to say to you on here right now, and any other professing Christian, if your attitude is, well, I'm indifferent or there's nothing I can do, then you are complicit. You are part of the problem, and you need to repent. Straight up.
Dang. So personally, have you ever encountered a racist moment, a moment of prejudice where you was discriminated against, where you was, you felt like, man, this is like I call it a moment where you realize you're black. Like growing up in a black community, you kind of forget that you are, because I grew up all black everything. So I was like, I never in my mind, when you grew up in a black school, black community, black church, did you ever think I'm black? Because you don't feel it. Everybody is. Even when you see white people in your community, like, okay, it's just people, they here. We don't know why they're here. So have you ever experienced something, and how did you handle that when you experienced it?
Bro, yes. So you know I'm from Southern California, right? West Side?
They don't. A lot of my viewers don't know. Southern California is racist. Like the
Yeah,
history
yeah,
of
absolutely.
Southern California is crazy.
Absolutely.
It's the same.
Absolutely.
It was the same as the South. And before you get into it, I was I like the false claim LA. And I was doing research just just so I can know know some cities and stuff. I'm like if I'm a false claim, I gotta know something. And I was end up just reading this documentary. Somehow I came up on a documentary or something, and it was saying how like a lot of blacks were fleeing to either Chicago, New York, or either Southern California to get away from racism. And this one guy in the documentary said, I thought it was bad in I think Mississippi or Georgia where he was from. He said it was worse.
Yeah.
There. So what did you experience? Because this is crazy to me.
A lot of people don't know. So my people, my dad's side of the family, my paternal grandmother, grandfather, they're from New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
They left New Orleans, moved to Compton, right? To escape the Jim Crow South, only to get to Compton and realize that they were hiring officers from the South to come to LA. All right. And we know that the officers from the South were KKK members, right?
Wow.
So they were hiring KKK members to leave the South and come to LA to police the black folks that were coming from the South into Los Angeles. This is documented history. But no, so yeah, bro. So one of the things that I experienced, man, is I was on the bus. Now I'm from Southern California. I was on the bus, right? And there was this dude that got on the bus, and white dude had swastikas all over his arms, right? Swastikas all over his arms, tattoos on his face. He looked like he was, he was fresh out, right?
Right. Yeah, jail. Yeah.
So he sits down not too far from me, and he just stares at me, right? Stares at me. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, right?
Right.
I'm a thug, but I was scared.
Right.
Right. I was scared, right?
Right.
And so he sits there, he's looking at me, his gaze is upon me, right? And he's looking at me, felt like it was forever, but, honestly, he had to have his gaze fixed on me for about 2 minutes. And then finally he says, I can't stand y'all. And then he looks away. So, I mean, I'm shook. Now, I honestly think the reason why he didn't actually do anything is because there were other people on the bus that I think would have came my aid, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'm shook that he was that bold. Now I was what, 14 at the time. And so that's one thing I experienced. I experienced, my dad one time came home. My dad was a preacher. My dad one time came home, pulled up in the driveway. A cop car pulled up right behind him. Right, he gets out to come to the house, and the cop calls him over, and the cop says, some about something that happened in the vicinity, something that happened in the area, him fitting the description. Ultimately, he lets my dad go. But I mean, bro, you gonna follow him all the way home,
Wow.
So yeah, these are things that I've experienced as an African-American man as well.
Right. So since like you said earlier, how did that shape your mental? Because like what's happening now is, and this is my fear, is I believe that maybe it's a false sense of hope. I believe that, okay, me and my granddad had this conversation. He said, my granddad said, when the people who like felt the oppression of Jim Crow kind of die off, he said, when my generation kind of die off, y'all might see a little bit of like freshness to it. Like now y'all may have more dialogue. The conversation, like, because the people who've been through it ain't gonna let it go. So y'all haven't necessarily been through it like we've been through it. So y'all may have more of an opportunity to, have real discussions about it. And, probably not necessarily end it, but, get it down to like where, 10%, like a low number where it's still some racist people out there. You racist? What? Like it's more like crazy that you racist, right? But my fear is when you have a lot of young kids now experiencing this, all you're doing is history is just repeating itself. So no, I necessarily didn't get, sprayed with a, water hose, a dog sitting on me, but I seen what can possibly happen to me, seen it in because I'm black. Now I get that same tenseness, that same hatred, that same resistance in my heart against, people of other colors. So how do you stop that?
Yeah, so that's a great question, man. And so honestly, a couple of things. Number one, racism, and if I'm understanding your question correctly, are you asking me how do you stop the fear, or how do we stop
the next generation from being as intense or abrasive as, like, let's say, like someone like my grandma would be? My grandma would be like, she's not racist, but she's like, oh, we don't mess with white people like that. And because of history. So I know a lot of older 70+ black people who are like, they cool, but they ain't that cool type. They different, but I don't mess with them. Yeah. And so like, what would you say to that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I understand now. So there's a book that just came out recently by a man named Ibram X. Kendi, and it's called How to Be an Anti-Racist, right?
Wow.
And he talks about how racism is manifested in broad brushing, right? So when you broad brush an entire group of people because of experiences that you've had, things that you've seen, one or two or three or four people of the group have done things against you, so you broad brush an entire group of people.
Right.
That's racism, right?
Right.
So what we have to do, right, is, as hard as it is, right, what we have to do is realize that not every white person is represented in that cop that had his foot on George Floyd's neck. There are white allies, right?
Say the name of the book again. Somebody asked you. Say the name of the book again.
Oh, it's called How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Okay.
Ibram X. Kendi. Okay. So there are white people that love justice. There are white people that see the heinous nature of racism and racial violence. And so what we need to try to do as much as possible is to not paint an entire group of people with the broad brush, which requires us to have relationships with other races, right? Even intentionally, right? We need to encourage our children. We need to encourage the people close to us not to be isolated. If you look through your phone right now and every contact you have looks like you, then there's a good chance that you're probably racist, right?
Right.
So as hard as it is, because initially, right, we see what we see with George Floyd and with all of these televised and publicized murders, and we immediately want to blame all white people. Right. What they do to us, right? They broad brush us. This is the reason why George Floyd died, because they see black men, all black men, as threats. Right. And so we don't want to be guilty of that same crime. And I do want to say, because I know there are white allies out there. Yeah. There are white brothers and sisters out there that are down for the cause. Right. Not many, but they are there. And we need to connect with them.
Like the white people who, like, I forget the is abolitionists or whatever they call who they if without their help, we don't get slaves to escape to actually do what we need to do, because it had to be some white people. Hey, look, if they kill me, I gotta do what's right. And I think at our generation, what we're seeing is a lot of people like, where are the people who saying that? Like, I don't care if I lose half my friends on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter or whatever. I gotta say, I don't care if I get invited to another white cool parties ever again. Yeah. At least I said what was right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So kind of like transition a little bit. Should we have, in the Christian faith, should we have terms like I'm a black Christian?
Absolutely.
Okay, why?
Because God made us both. Right? If you're black, it's because God created you like that. Okay. Right? You are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? If you're a Christian, it's because of God's grace that he extended to you, right? Right. So God gave you your blackness and he gave you your Christianity. Rather than running from either one of them, we should glorify him in both of them. Right. It's amazing, because you'll have people that will say, you just need to be you, and you just need to be, you just need to be an individual. You just need to be unique, until you say, okay, cool, I'm black and Christian. Oh, well, no, don't put your ethnicity. No, what do you mean? Right. God is glorified when I function, worship him, and live and embrace the identity that he's given me. Right. He's glorified by that because he made me this way. Right. And like me telling him thank you when I am unashamedly and courageously me. Right. So no,
Right.
I don't apologize for being black. I'm
Right.
black. I don't apologize for being Christian. And by the way, in Revelation chapter 7, verse 9, there's a picture of the eschaton, the end of the age, right?
Right. Right.
And it says that there before the throne will be all nations, all tongues, all tribes, all peoples, right?
Right.
These ethnic distinctions will still exist before the throne. In other words, when we die, right? Or when Christ comes back and we are glorified, we will still have our ethnic distinctions.
Wow.
I will still be a black man.
Wow.
You will still be a black man, right? God is glorified when we worship him in the unity of our diversity.
Right.
He created us the way we are, and it brings him glory when we come to him as we are and worship him in that way.
Wow.
When Jesus rose from the dead, right?
Right.
We know that he rose from the dead with a glorified body, right?
Right.
However, he still had his ethnic distinctives,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
When he rose from the dead and the disciples recognized him, right? They didn't, once they recognized him, they didn't say,
"Who are you?"
Look like a ghost.
Right.
Oh my God, Jesus, you're Chinese. No, he was a Jewish man with his Jewish body, right? So it was glorified. He still had his ethnic distinctions. None of that goes away. I am black and Christian, and I glorify God in both.
Oh my, like, you know what? You know how many times I've read the story when Jesus comes and talks to Peter, and when he comes to talk to the 12 disciples, and when he's talking to the dudes on the road, I never thought he still looked Jewish. He still looked like himself.
Yeah.
I've never thought about that.
They recognize him, and they don't say, Jesus, wow, you look like Casper, the friendly ghost floating around up in here. No, they recognize him as him. Thomas puts his hand in his
flesh,
right?
Yes.
He still maintains ethnic distinctions even in his glorified body.
Wow.
So that's a false dichotomy to say, oh, I am black and Christian. God made me both.
Right.
I glorify God in both.
Wow. And it even speaks to the idea that when people say, oh, when we get to heaven, well, like, you know, some people who say, I'm not going to do anything. Well, when we get to heaven, I don't have to worry about color no more because it's going to be done.
No. Look, if that is their perspective, they don't understand that God he's glorified in all of his creative genius.
Yes.
Right. That's like saying, when I get to heaven, all the trees are going to be, one color.
Right.
No, God made trees of varying sizes, varying colors. God made birds of varying colors, God made animals differently, right? When we get before him in glory, all of that stuff will be maintained. Right. And so we're not going to get to glory and all of a sudden we're just one monocultural group.
Right.
We're going to glorify him in our unique culture, in our unique in our unique ethnic persuasion and perspective.
Because even the angels have diversity. Because when you hear about Gabriel and Michael, they don't sound this. They don't even talk the same. And how they approach them.
God is glorified in diversity, and honestly, I believe it dishonors God to say I am not black and Christian, because you're denying a fundamental aspect of your identity and how he created you.
Right.
And he doesn't want you to deny that. He wants you to glorify him in that.
Right. Dang. That's awesome. So okay, to kind of play devil's advocate just a little bit. So what should it be appropriate for a black person to feel offended if a white person say I'm white and Christian? We shouldn't feel offended by that.
Well, see, here's the thing.
Okay.
You have to understand that African Americans were forcibly stripped away from our mother country, right? And brought to America. Right. So we don't have the luxury as African Americans of knowing what country in West Africa we're from. Yeah. We don't know if we're Senegalese. We don't know if we're from Benin. We don't know if we're from Nigeria.
Ivory Coast.
We don't know. However, our white brothers and sisters, they don't have that dilemma. Right. They don't have that problem. They know if they're German. Right. They know if they're Swedish. They know they can trace their history. Right. So when we use the term black,
You break it down.
When we use the term black, it has, even though it's a color, it has come to identify and ethnicity and a shared experience in this country, right? Which is why when I write, I always capitalize the letter B in the word black,
right?
Because you capitalize the letter A in the word Asian,
right?
You capitalize the letter F in the word French. Black has come to, even though it's a color, it has come to represent an ethnicity and a shared experience in this country, right?
Wow.
So to say that I am a Black Christian, number one, is acknowledging, right? I don't necessarily have the luxury of knowing my country of origin, but I do identify with this American ethnic experience that is Blackness, right? However, on the other hand, white and whiteness have completely different connotations.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
When you say when you identify with whiteness, that's a little bit problematic, right? Because and I'm getting into dangerous territory here, right?
Okay. It's okay. Hey.
It's because of this concept of whiteness, right?
Gotcha.
That bodies have been plundered. It's because of this concept of whiteness that people have been enslaved, right? Because whiteness has associated with whiteness is forcible power and privilege.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And so to identify with whiteness is unfortunately aligning yourself with the narrative of oppression and slavery. Right. Because you don't have to do that. You're German, you're Dutch, right? You don't have to identify with this color thing called whiteness.
Right.
So I would say that it's more problematic to say that I'm white and Christian than it is to say that I'm Black and Christian. Now, if you want to say that I'm Dutch and Christian, there are whole denominations. You have Dutch Reformed denominations. Right. If you want to say I'm Korean and Christian, go ahead. But when you say I'm white and Christian, that connotation it hits differently than saying you're Black and Christian because of the history.
Right. So I know we got like a few minutes left, period, and I know you got to get prepared for your show because we want to end at 8:30. I give you a little time. So any questions anybody want to ask Pastor Isaiah? I want to open the floor right now, I want to have this dialogue, and I don't want to run out of time. Because bro, you're educated and you breaking it down because like you have people saying that. You have people saying, well, why can I say I'm white and Christian? But when you break it down like that, because the association, you can trace your history. And I was talking, the most mind blowing thing about America, most of my last names came from our slave masters.
Right.
And people don't realize that I can't I know that when I looked up the name Birch, when I went back, it's from German descent. I'm not from Germany.
Right.
We have the Birch name has a crescent, it has all this stuff. I'm like, this isn't identified with anything that I've been through. So here go the first question. How does it feel to see 19 Black men and women die in America by police officers and nothing has changed? So based on the experiences we have had, how does it feel? How do you feel to see? And you kind of said a little bit earlier, you feeling raised, but when you we can keep track. How do you feel? And these are people we can see, right? So how do you feel?
Yeah, honestly, straight up traumatized.
Okay.
I was up till almost 4 a.m. last night, agonizing over George Floyd and the fact that there is a murderous cop in Minnesota right now that is still free, and it's traumatizing, And so here's what I want to say, right? We have to get away from this sappy Christianity that makes us think that we always have to wear a happy mask. Right? We have to realize that when in the face of injustice, in the face of evil, right? Sometimes it is proper to lament. There's a whole book in the Bible called Lamentations. And sometimes it is right and proper to weep, to mourn. Sometimes it is right and proper just to sit and have a solemn assembly with yourself, right? And so honestly, that's how I've been. As my wife, it's been very somber. It's been hard. It's been tough. And I don't know, I don't know how long it's going to be that way, but I'm shook.
Right.
Answer that question.
All right, so I'm kind of, Aaron says, like, so I'm kind of paraphrase what she's saying, because I have a white best friend, I have a white close friend, and they have yet to say anything about the situation. Now, mind you, they do indulge in Black culture, and I never felt like they were racist. But how do you encourage, I guess, your white friends, like, hey, you ain't saying nothing about this, you kind of make me feel some type of way, because what if this was me? Like, what do you say to your white counterparts who are not speaking up?
Just that. Just what you said. Call them out on it.
Yeah.
Courageously say, hey, if you're not empathizing with the plight of African Americans and other marginalized people, I don't see how much in common we have, right? You don't allow them to be comfortable in their ignorance.
Right.
You don't allow them to be comfortable in their partiality. The reality is if somebody claims to not see Blackness or Black people, then what's being said is, I don't see the issues affecting Black people.
Wow.
I don't see the systemic injustices happening to Black people.
Right.
That's why colorblindness is a pathetic philosophy and perspective. And it's not true. There's no such thing as colorblindness.
Right.
But whoever claims to be colorblind is essentially saying, I do not see and I do not care about what's going on with Black people.
Right. Okay. Do you think racism is only a Black and white thing? And can racism be Black on Black?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And honestly, so again, let me plug this book. It's called How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. And it's actually a follow-up book to a book that a tome that he wrote entitled Stamped from the Beginning. So get both of those.
Okay.
And I used to believe that only white people could be racist because racism is associated with power, right?
And institutions.
Yeah, right. But when you read How to Be an Anti-Racist, and I'm still processing what X. Kendi is saying, I agree with him now. It was hard, but when you read How to Be an Anti-Racist, he argues that anybody can be racist. If you are harboring ideas of superiority and inferiority, right?
Gotcha.
For any people group, if you're broad brushing any people group, then that is a racist idea, right?
Yes.
So it's possible for because honestly, here's the reality: Black people, you can be Black and be racist against Black people.
Yes.
So to say that Black people cannot be racist is to discount all of the and I'm not going to use any derogatory language, but all of the Black people out there that are at this moment just as insensitive to the plight of marginalized people as the most racist white person.
Right.
So if we claim that Black people cannot be racist, what about Black people that are actively fighting against voting rights?
Right.
What about Black people that are actively fighting against access to health care? What about Black people that are actively fighting against policies that can benefit Black people? So
I don't even think about those people.
Yeah, right. So so that's kind of where I land now.
Okay.
Y'all got to get that book, man. How to Be an Anti-Racist.
I think I'm gonna get it. Is it on audio? I'm gonna get it on audiobook. If it's not, I'm still gonna get it.
It's on audiobook. It's on audiobook. Yes.
How do you respond correctly to white people who don't see the problem?
I don't. You know what? It is not my job. We are in the information age, right? And we have access to books, to newspaper articles. There is so much information out there that is not funny, right?
Right.
I am not responsible for educating white America when white America they are savvy enough, right, to maintain power and privilege. They are savvy enough, right, to do all the things that they're doing quite effectively, they're savvy enough to pick up a book and learn about these things. It's funny, man. It's funny. It's funny because I work with some guys that have questionable views.
Okay.
I'll leave it there. And, you know, I had a couple of conversations with them initially, and they denied that there was a such thing as systemic injustice, right?
Okay.
No, it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as systemic injustice. They said there's injustice, but there's no such thing as systemic injustice. Okay,
Right.
fine. Then you have Donald Trump, who passes these mass incarceration initiatives and bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they come back to me, right? And they're like, what do you think about Trump? Look at what he did. He passed some, you know, he's doing stuff on mass incarceration. Obama didn't do anything around mass incarceration, right? And they were all gloating. And I said, so Trump acknowledged the reality of mass incarceration? And they were like, yeah, he sure did. He did something about it. I said, so you still want to say systemic injustice doesn't exist?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You can't say it. You can recognize the problem. Then you said it.
Right. Exactly, right? And so at that point, it's like you have all the evidence right in front of you.
Right.
Right? You are being willfully ignorant. Right. And at that point, it is not my job to be your educator. You're grown. You can do it yourself.
All right. And I'm going to filter some of these questions. So you said you would define racism, I think it is, you would define racism as broad stroking a people group, culture group negatively, or how would you define that? Just real quick.
So I would define racism now as harboring ideas which relegate certain groups as inferior, other groups as superior, and broad brushing entire groups, stereotyping entire groups just because of their ethnicity, right?
Yeah.
Solely based upon ethnicity. I would say these are racist ideas.
Right. So like you would say superior complex, that there are like for instance, if I would say black culture is, you know, the best culture, and all the cultures are terrible, and all white people are, you know, whatever, because this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a racist idea.
Okay.
To look at an Asian person, for example, and to say, I know they can't drive.
Right.
That is a racist idea.
It is.
Okay?
It is.
And so, you know, when you read How to Be an Anti-Racist or Stamp from the Beginning, you'll discover that racist ideas were created and perpetuated to support racist policies, right?
Right.
Racist policy came first, right? The desire to spread the enterprise of slavery throughout the New World, right?
Right.
Was bolstered by racist ideas about black people, right? So these racist ideas were promulgated and perpetuated to ensure that the racist policies would be upheld. Right. So you have racist policies that necessitate racist ideas.
Right. All right. Do you think, because I'm scrolling down, do you think that, because the question is, do you think all races can spirit racism? But hey, I'm going to be controversial. Do you think white people can experience racism?
Do I think they can or can't?
Can.
Yeah, so again, I want everybody to read How to Be an Anti-Racist. Read that book and be confronted with these ideas. I do think, right, because here's the reality. Racist policies don't just hurt black people. Right. The white poor have more in common with black people than they do with white rich people.
They do, and we say this in the black community. Matter of fact, when I find out that you know, people in the country, you know, white people in the country who live in the double wides and stuff like that, eat the same stuff we eat, like chitlins, and I was like, wait, what? I met a white guy who's like, I eat chitlins. I'm like, what do you know? My culture was blown up. So yeah, okay, I'll keep going. I'm sorry, just want to share that.
Yeah. So if a racist policy is passed, right? So let's take access to healthcare, right? Okay. So you know that disproportionately in our communities, right, we have health problems and pre-existing conditions, right? limiting access to health care is a racist policy because it disproportionately impacts African Americans, right? Well, there will be poor whites as well that will be impacted, right? By the limiting of access to health care, right? So yes, it affects African Americans in the same, poor whites in the same way that it affects African Americans. We're all affected by racist policies.
All right, because when you say stuff like that, and see what bothers my heart is, I think a lot of, especially Black educated people, we can look at something and say, like for instance, when Trump was doing his campaign, and he was like, "We're gonna bring back coal," and we all kind of looked at each other. No, you're not. We know that's not true. And then you can list the different environmental issues, the like how coal is not good it's not doing good in business. Like it would it'd be equivalent like me trying to sell stuff like carrying around the ice trays to everybody's house, trying to give ice to everybody still. Like that just it's not going to happen. But a lot of people who heard that promise were like lower white middle class or in that poor class who went to those coal mines, the coal in the mine. Was like, yeah, and we was like, yo, that's fake. That's not gonna happen because we've been promised stuff before in the past, and we were like, not happening. We know that. So okay, we know that we like Tupac. We can point out the issue, right, all day, every day, right? How do we get people on the same page? Like this is the last question I see, and then I'm just kind of like maybe you can dialogue for the last 4 minutes. Sure. How do we move forward? Will there ever be, or how do we get people to see that, hey, we got a race issue, let's come together and do it? Is that even possible? How do we end on a high note?
So as a believer, I will say that the ultimate solution is the preaching of the gospel, changing of hearts. Because at the end of the day, racism is a sin issue. It's a heart issue. And if hearts aren't changed, laws will not change them. Okay. So that's first and foremost. We have to be busy sharing this eternal message for the salvation of for the salvation of people's souls. Right. Second to that, so if you're listening to me right now and you're a part of the majority culture, right? I encourage you, and you claim to be a Christian, you're going to have to be educated, right? These things, and a lot of this is by no fault of your own, right? Because many of you were educated in the same public school system I was. You're a victim of the whitewashing of history. You're a victim of white supremacy, just like I'm a victim of white supremacy. However, W.B. Du Bois talks about this double consciousness thing. In order to, as an African-American man, I have to learn some of the ins and outs of the majority culture. I have to understand some of the things pertaining to, the majority culture. Those within the majority culture, they do not have that same burden. And so they're going to have to learn. If you're on here and you are a white professing Christian, there's a book that you have to read entitled Divided by Faith by Michael Emerson.
Divided by Faith by Michael Emerson.
Divided by Faith by Michael Emerson. Because part of the solution will exist in those within the majority culture learning and then being willing to relinquish power and privilege. There has to be equity, right? And that's really hard, right?
We got 50 seconds.
I know. Relinquishing power and privilege is a hard thing, but it's going to require that. Thirdly, look, if hearts aren't going to change, right? And if white people won't learn, then we need to ensure that we send the right people to Washington. We need to ensure that racist policies aren't being passed, right? We need to ensure that we know not just who's going to Washington, but we need to know our local politicians, our state politicians, right? If we cannot compel our neighbors to do what's right, then we absolutely need to compel the politicians to do what's right.
Okay, we about to get cut off.
What's that?
We about to get cut off. Hey, everybody. We about to get cut off. Praying out. Hey, DM us. Bye.